Hello PGC, this is Pastor Ian here. Today I want to talk to you guys about walls, because we see walls everywhere. In fact, if you're watching this inside of your house, you can look around and you can see that there are plenty of walls. They separate your room from your sister's room, or your brother's room, or your mom and dad's room. If you're in a washroom, it separates you from the outside so nobody can see what you're doing, thank goodness. Walls are a part of our everyday life, but sometimes walls can actually be problems. Sometimes people build walls to keep people out. In fact, most homes have a different type of wall, like this, called a fence. And fences are really good at keeping people out, because then you can't see over them, nobody can see in, nobody can see what's going on. It's a good way of keeping people far away from you and your family. Did you ever think that there was a wall between you and God? Well, if you didn't, there is. And it's a wall that we actually built by ourselves, without His help. You see, we have something called sin in our lives, and that's any choice that we make that is against God. It's something that God doesn't like. Something bad, something mean, something not right. Bullying people, telling mean stories about them, lying, cheating, beating up on your brother or sister when they're smaller and weaker than you. Those are all things that count as sin. Those are all things that build walls between us and God. Because here's the problem: God is so holy and just and awesomely powerful that when He comes into contact with sin, it's like this. He has to instantly destroy it because He's just too holy, too pure, too good. And sin is just that evil and that bad. So that wall that separates us from God, it's there because we built it. Our sin built that wall. And as we look in Ephesians chapter 2, God specifically tells us that there is another wall. There's a wall between these people called Jews and Gentiles. Now, Jews are the original people of God. They're the people who are Moses and Abraham and Isaac and Joshua and all of these people from the Old Testament. Joseph with his Technicolor dream coat, those are Jews. They're people who worship God. They're people who have this thing called a covenant, which means an agreement between them and God. And those people are kind of the special chosen people of God. And then there are the other people called the Gentiles. And for a really, really long time, Gentiles were not allowed to serve as God's people. There was this division where they had to be circumcised to be a part of God's family. And there was this barrier where it's like the Gentile people, everybody other than the Jews, couldn't really participate. They couldn't really be a part of God's family. Their sin kept them out. And so what the Apostle Paul, who's writing Ephesians, says is that he breaks down the wall. That He actually sends His Son, Jesus Christ, to deal with our sin, to deal with the wall that separates us from God, that separates the Jew from the Gentile, that separates the sinner from the Savior. Our sin, our wall is built on sin, but God sends His Son to break it down. And that's the thing. We may look at me like, well, I don't see a wall. I don't build a wall, but it's there. We have those moments when we don't feel like we belong. We have those moments when we are anxious about our lives. We're not sure about if people are going to like us or if people are going to care about us, or we don't know what we're going to do with our lives. And those are all products of our sin. Sin are those things that separate us from God, that keep us away from Him, from having that good relationship with Him. Because when we have a strong relationship with God, we don't worry in the same way about what people think about us. Because as long as God cares about us, as long as God likes what we're doing, then it doesn't really matter what anybody else does. We don't feel lonely, because even if I have nothing in common with any of my Christian brothers or sisters at PGC, I have in common with them Jesus Christ, and that's enough for me to live with them, to be friends with them. That's all it takes. Walls are built to keep people out and also to keep people in. And the wall that we build of sin keeps us away from God. It keeps us away from Him. It keeps us safe from His justice, safe from dealing with the consequences of us being sinful people. But sometimes you just need to smash some stuff. Now, one of my favorite jobs was when I was actually working at a school, and we had a job to do where we had to take these tables and we had to put them in the recycling bin, but they were too big for the recycling bin. So my boss, he gave me a sledgehammer. And if you know what a sledgehammer is, it's like a really, really big hammer that's really heavy. And he said, break it. And it was one of my favorite things to do, just to take this sledgehammer and just destroy some stuff. God does that with our wall. He breaks the wall. He smashes it with his son, Jesus Christ. But only if we let him in. In another part of the Bible, Jesus says, I stand at the door and knock. Will you let me in? It's up to you if you want to keep the wall as it is, or if you want to break it down. If you want to be in good relationship with God, or if you just want to be alone. The choice is yours. So how are you going to choose?